it would be terrible if West Papua were to get independence and were to potentially mess with our gold mine. And so what happens is they want Indonesia. Obviously, Indonesia wants Indonesia. And by 1969, it's getting a bit sticky. I'll read you out this quote. This comes directly from Suharto, and this is what he says to Freeport. Suharto gives Freeport, quote, broad powers over the local population and resources, including the right to take, on a tax-free basis, land, timber, water, and other natural resources, and to resettle indigenous inhabitants while providing, quote, reasonable compensation. That was what Suharto gave to Freeport on the land of West Papua. Remember, these people don't share a language, they don't share an ethnicity, and they, for a lot of them, have had zero contact with Indonesians even by this point. Some West Papuans don't get contact with Indonesians until the early 2000s.
Yeah. Yeah, wow.
So, again, quite crazy. There's about 800,000 Papuans at this point living in Papua that were eligible to vote in the referendum. Now, what happens is we call this the Act of Free Choice, and that was the referendum that Indonesia gave to the Papuans. So remember, 800,000 can vote. But the Indonesians go, well, to get 800,000 seems a bit extreme. We can't get to everywhere in the Papuan Highlands. We don't even know where all these Papuans are. Like, we still haven't had contact with Papuans. So we can't poll everyone. So we're just going to take 1,025 people, and they'll be representative of all of West Papua.
Huh. Jeez.
Imagine if
1,000 of 800,000.
Yes. Imagine if the school captain race just chose 15 from year 4 to be representative of everyone.
Yeah.
I suppose this is what the teachers are, really, when you think about it.
Okay. Yeah.
So, we have an Australian journalist over there at the time. His name was Hugh Jun. And he basically gives this report that the Indonesian army harassed every single voter. And anyone that was near the Act of Free Choice or was reporting on it was then also harassed by the Indonesian army. And funnily enough, the vote for independence was unanimously no. 100% no, and 100% in support of being under Indonesian occupation.
What? Who would have thought?
And so you would think...
It's like you copied for an exam or something, and you shouldn't get 100%, because that would be too obvious. It's like, oh, get that one wrong, you know?
Yeah. Now, you would think at this point that the United Nations would be a robust enough organization to be like, actually, you're going to have to redo that one. Like, you have rushed your work here. This is riddled with mistakes. You're going to have to take your time, resubmit. And you would think this would especially be the case because the Secretary General of the UN was a guy called U Thant. He was from Thailand. Literally, his first name is U. It's the letter U.
Wow.
So,
okay.
Around before 2000 SMS abbreviations. And he put in a guy called Fernando Ortiz Sanz. And basically he's like, you're going to be my personal representative on the ground in West Papua. And Ortiz Sanz said, look, been there, came back, can confirm, we're talking about 95% of Papuans who want independence. And you would think at that point, the UN would be like, okay, clearly this is not right and something's a bit fishy here. But if you read the minutes from the UN meeting, it's like a footnote in a UN meeting. It's like, and just on the agenda as well, just noting that the referendum in Indonesia has granted Indonesia control rather than independence for West Papua. Noted. Indonesia, do you agree with this? Cool. Other country, do you agree with this? And you would think that the other country would be Papua or the Papuans, but the other country is the Netherlands. And because they don't care about it because they lost it. Netherlands don't care about this anymore. And the Netherlands like, yeah, we recognize this. Kind of mad, right?
What a stitch up.
So by 1969, it's just like, oh yeah, no, Papua is now under the control of Indonesia. And then they just moved on in the meeting. And you're like...
Yeah, that's crazy.
Guys, not to beat that guy, can we just circle back a bit?
Yeah. So what are we doing for lunch, guys? It's like...
Obviously, the Papuans are like, what the heck? That is not what should have happened. And they form a group called the Organisasi Papua Merdeka, which translates... so OPM... And that translates to the Free Papua movement. But they're called the OPM because in Indonesian it's
OPSM.
Papua Merdeka. Can you imagine fighting a guerrilla war for half a century to be like, oh yeah, that's like the glasses group that isn't Specsavers.
Oh, we didn't know that part yet.
So 1971, they formed I nearly said OPSM, you're in my head. They formed the OPM.
Okay.
And they declare independence, they write a constitution, and they raise the West Papuan flag. And at that point, they'd done some design work and you'd workshopped it a little bit. They call it the Morning Star. It's pretty similar to the Cuban flag, would probably be the closest one that I can think of. So it's a star with like a triangle, like the South African triangle, and then it's blue and white with a red star. So they raise the Morning Star, and Indonesia are like, well, that's terrorism because you
Raised the flag.
Well, you raise the flag, and you're proclaiming, you're denying Indonesian sovereignty, and you're proclaiming that another nation has this land. That is terrorism. It's kind of create a secession movement.
Okay.
So, the OPM are pretty outgunned. You've got the Indonesian army, backed by America, versus bows and arrows. Fight the good fight. So they go, okay, we need friends. And obviously, the West are not going to be our friends. We've got no way of contacting with the Soviet Union. Also, it's the 70s, it's the Soviet Union's not interested in us at all. What do we do? Let's go to Freeport. And let's go to Freeport and we'll say, hey, you can keep Freeport if you support us in an independence movement. And you just completely have your mind. We don't care about your mind. We just want independence. So they go to Freeport and Freeport go, no, we're on really good terms with Indonesia. We're not going to go break up with them for you. Like, oh, damn it. And so they then make Erzberg, Grasberg the target. Well, Grasberg wasn't found yet, so just Erzberg. They then go make Erzberg the kind of target of guerrilla attacks. And so they cause about $120,000 of damage of like cutting cables, slashing pipes, that sort of thing. And they take the idea from Nelson Mandela's sabotage campaign in South Africa. And so Freeport's like, excuse me, bit rude. And the Indonesian government then launches a retaliatory attack. It's called the massacre of Baliam Valley. And according to the Australian Human Rights Commission, we have this is also using Australian equipment that has somehow ended up in the hands of the Indonesian government. So using Australian equipment and Australian bombs, 4,146 Papuans were killed. That's bigger than 9/11. And this is a retaliatory attack in 1977.
What's it like? What's an attack on? Like, is it a
village?
A village? Yeah. Okay. That was just a village that was known to be sympathetic to this.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But reality is that like when you're dealing with women and children, they're not exactly involved in the independence movement. So I'm going to skip a bit of chronology here, or kind of fast forward through the 80s and the 90s. But there's some pretty high profile ones. Probably the biggest one is the 1984 assault of Nagasawa Orma Kessel village. So that was 200 Papuans were killed in that one. The Indonesian Navy then shelled coastal villages. So we've got Toronto, Taka, Masi, and they were shelled by the Indonesian Navy. Then in 1996, we have something called the Mapenduma hostage crisis, where basically there was like a botanic exploration of Indonesian Papua, like looking just at the flora and the fauna. And the West Papuan, the OPM then went and took hostages and used them as as leverage, saying, hey, we want independence, and also we want the UN to come in and inspect what's going on. The hostage crisis got really tense, and then what happened was the Red Cross intervened, and the OPM was happy to negotiate with the Red Cross. What was really dodgy was that the Indonesian government used a helicopter that had the appearance of a Red Cross helicopter. So the Papuans came out to be like, okay, we're going to talk. And then they used that helicopter to attack the West Papuan villages. And the hostages were freed. Hostages got out of there. But many Papuans were killed in the process. I think something like about 5 of those Papuans were then taken by the Indonesian government and were either kind of executed or imprisoned. Those 5 became heroes in the OPM. And the West Papua, they talk about those guys like we would talk about the Anzacs.
Yeah. Okay.
In West Papua. Mark Davis also wrote a high profile, when I think he was at the ABC at this time, Mark Davis wrote a very high profile piece on the Mapuduma hostage crisis and exposed what was going on in West Papua to a lot of Australians that had no idea. We then fast forward to 1998. Now, it's tough to picture. So picture the island of New Guinea, and you know how there's like a little crevice in about the middle of the north of Papua New Guinea. I don't know if you know the map of New Guinea.
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah.
There's a little island that's in that crevice called Biak. The thing you didn't know about Biak is in 1998, after the Mapuduma hostage crisis went down, they raised the flag once again, which is equivalent to raising the finger.
Yeah.
So they put the Morning Star up, and what happens in retaliation is that the Indonesian Army and Navy both enter the island of Biak. They then take a number, we don't actually know how many, a number of Papuans. They then take them on a boat, and according to Papuan testimony, they throw those bodies off the boat and have them drowned and killed. Now, the bodies of Papuans rocked up on shores, and we know that much. So somehow, these bodies have been washed up on shore. So we've got the bodies. Indonesia's official story was that it was a result of something called the Atape tsunami that happened at a similar time. Mike, well, firstly, how do you know that? That's all you can answer is, I don't know, maybe it was this. Just to conclusively say that it was the Atape tsunami sounds a little bit suspicious. Secondly, the Atape tsunami was about 1,000 kilometers away. That was closer to Papua New Guinea than it was to the island of Biak. And so the story just doesn't add up at all. And that reached the end of the 1990s, was a real low point in terms of the Indonesian government, West Papuan negotiations. But West Papua still was under the control of the Indonesian government. I'm going to fast forward then to 2006, year of the World Cup.
I've just started primary school.
Oh, yeah, you would have.
Yeah. Do with that what you will.
CIA, if you're going to use that when we talk about George Bundy, just if you want that detail, I'll give you that one for free. What happened was a couple dozen of West Papuan refugees, they got on a canoe.
Okay.
And we're going to go for a little canoe ride.
You know, once, I feel like I've told this story, but the word canoe was what got me out in the spelling bee in year 3.
Oh, no. How did you spell it?
E-O.
Phonetically? Oh, they're even worse. That's even worse.
Yeah. Yeah, that one still weighs on me. But hey, we move.
So they left on the canoe and they decided, where we're going to go? We're going to Cape York. And we're going to set sail for Cape York because we hate it here. And so they end up in Cape York, and the Australian government...
Feels like a long way, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was a very impressive canoe trip.
Yeah.
So it's like a little outrigger, so a bit bigger than canoe you went on in like the national park.
Yeah. And the Port Hacking River just kind of got your canoe out. Yeah.
So it's a very impressive feat because they basically, they leave northern West Papua, sail around the back, so next to the Spice Islands, go through the south of New Guinea, and then they cross the Torres Strait on a little outrigger canoe.
Wow.
So they then rock up in Cape York on the western side, so where there's less people living, than on the eastern side, which has your North Queensland cities and whatnot.
Yeah.
And they rock up there, and they're like, we're refugees, you have to take us. And initially the Australian government does. So this is John Howard's government. Indonesia's like, whoa. You're saying these guys are refugees. And Australia's like, well, we don't know. We just want to investigate this. Indonesia goes, well, we're withdrawing our ambassadors because that is incredibly offensive to say that we are causing refugees in our own country. And they withdraw their ambassadors, and Australia's like, oh, crap, this is bad. Like, literally, in terms of big powers, the closest one to us, we want to be on good terms with Indonesia. We do not want to make an enemy out of them. So they go to the negotiating table, and they go to the island of Lombok. Do you remember learning about that in...
Indonesian?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weirdly, I remember it getting a lot of attention in Indonesian.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know. That was
Maybe.
Okay.
It's just the name of one of the islands, so I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bike Saja, like Bahasa Indonesia, like...
Yeah. Bike Saja's not an island.
No, that's a phrase. Very, very good.
Yeah, very good.
Bike Terima Kasih, yeah. I remember a little bit. And in the Lombok Agreement, they basically say two things. One, they're not refugees. And two, we will not support secession movements in each other's country. Because Indonesia said, by calling these guys refugees, you're giving legitimacy to West Papua, and you are causing a terrorist group to function in our country.
What are they if they're not refugees.